And when his birthday came, I really realized that he was just like never ever coming back in human form and like on this side. And so I talked to my husband. I said, I was angry. I was angry with God. I was angry with myself because I wasn't there. I blamed myself like for not being at home when he was taking his last breaths. Like being at work and prioritizing everything else over my family. And I remember my husband saying to me, you ever think that that's the way God needed them to remember your dad so that they could really realize that he was grown, that gone? Like you were grown and you knew the concept of death. They were so young. Maybe that was the only way that they were going to grasp the concept that he was never coming back.
Hey, Shelby.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good. So, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for
Shelby,
having
you
me.
are the owner, founder of Powerful Minds, a counseling service, and you help so many people. I always see them talking about you, and they say so many good things. You are one of the people that I would trust to send somebody to. And I think that that definitely says a lot about you, about your character. You are phenomenal.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. We've gone to school together for a very long time, and I have seen you go through some very difficult situations. And I always like to get therapist like perspectives on what it's like to actually go through things on their own. So I remember not that long ago, you suddenly lost your father. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So it was in 2018, October actually. Um, my dad was sick, but he wasn't like die tomorrow sick. And it's crazy because when October comes, I can remember like everything leading up to that day. Like I vividly have a picture of that. And so the morning he woke up, I was a therapist at the time. I was working at a Suboxone detox type program. And our shift was 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. And so normally my daddy would get up in the morning, but I knew he had kind of had a rough day before, like just not feeling well. And I remember going to their room, my parents' room, because I lived at home. I remember going to my parents' room and seeing them sleeping. And I remember just like standing there like I couldn't move. And I don't know what, like I couldn't move. I didn't know what that was about. So I went to work and like I said, I had to be there at 5 in the morning. It wasn't an hour and a half later, my mom was calling me and was like, she was screaming and it was a scream I'll never forget. Like he's not breathing. She was doing CPR. My brothers were 13 and 15 at the time. And so they were home. They had not left yet, left for school. And so I don't even remember what happened. I remember saying, I'm on my way, I'm on my way. And I ran to my boss's office to tell her that I was leaving. I just didn't want to run out of my job, you know. And she tried to get one of my coworkers to drive me home because I told her what was happening. And I said, no, I need to go now. And I remember driving down Pass Road. It was in Biloxi. And I remember driving down Pass Road, and I couldn't deter if I wanted to take 90 or Pass Road. I ended up taking Pass Road for whatever reason. I got stopped by every stoplight. I called two school zones because it was school time, like kids going to school, so the speed limits. By the time I got to Pass Road Elementary, my mom was like, the ambulance is here, we have to go. And I was like, go. Sorry. I got choked up there. I was like, go. I'll meet y'all at the hospital. So I ended up getting to before then, my best friend at the time called me and was like, what's going on at your house? She worked at the middle school and we live like 2 minutes from the middle school. And I was like, I don't know, please go in there and see what's going on. And so she was there like helping my mom put shoes on, get the boys kind of together. And by the time I got to the hospital, They transported him. I met my mom and my brothers in the little waiting area. I don't know if you guys have ever been through the hospital where somebody dies and they like put you in this room to come tell you that this person has died. We had been through that before, and so my mom was like freaking out. She didn't want to go in the room because we know what that room is, like a consultation room, basically. And so we started praying. I said, we need to pray. We need to pray right now. We need to pray right now and just pray, because my dad had had episodes before, but nothing like this. So they come in and tell us that they did everything that they could to save him, but he was no longer there, and that's that. So it was very traumatic because my brothers were there. They were so young. My mom had just lost the only person she had been with for over 30 years. The only person that we've ever known as a father. So it was shocking. It was hurtful, and I still didn't believe it for a while.
Yeah. And you were actively a therapist at this time, and it was still hard for you to process it.
I got my master's degree in 2017, so a year prior, and I was already practicing I was a substance abuse counselor. Okay. And so I wasn't licensed or anything at that time, but I was still actively doing therapy.
Okay. First of all, shout out to your boss, because most of them out here are not that considerate to be like, let me find you somebody to drive you because you're going through a traumatic situation. But I can only imagine. So let me ask you, because a lot of times people go through traumatic situations and they start to recount those situations. Like you said, the memories, you can smell all the smells, feel all the feels, you can remember what you were eating at that moment in time. And most people go through that year after year. Is there a term for that?
It's called trauma responses. So when your body goes through trauma, you remember certain things, certain smells. And so that's why, if, let's just say you had a grandmother, right? And she wore a certain perfume, and somebody walks up behind you in Walmart and that smell of your grandma, and it instantly brings back memories. That's what we call trauma responses, or triggers to things that are important to us. It doesn't necessarily always have to be bad. I think some people think trauma is just this array of different negative feelings, but trauma can be a different multitude of things. So I think it's a trigger and a response that our body, and I can go into a lot of psychological terms, but I don't know if that would be helpful, but we have what we call ABCs, and it's an activating event is the a behavior, and then the C is a consequence or something that happens. And so I think that that's what that is. I think that our bodies and our brains put things into a certain box, and we just can't remember it. We can't forget it. It's just something that sticks with you.
Which is crazy. So I'm going off on a tangent here. Yeah. Okay. It even makes me think of the term muscle memory, where a lot of people say like, oh, it's just muscle memory. But I truly believe like your muscles actually hold on to your physical memories. They remember all those things. That's why like it's hard for you to untense your back and your shoulders and everything else. And especially for women, because we carry so many emotions.
Yes. Doctors,
like massage therapists, physical therapists have told me for years, like, oh, you have the muscles of a bodybuilder.
Oh, God.
I'm like, well, I guess that means I hold on to a lot of stuff.
Right, yes.
But it's crazy to me. And the reason that I bring that up is because I see so many people who are triggered without knowing. It's like, oh, I automatically get sad this day every single year, and I don't even know why I'm getting sad anymore. Like, they're going through, and they don't even know it's triggering them. It could be a sound or a smell, but because they've suppressed those memories so deeply, it's still triggering them. Absolutely. They just don't remember it. Right. So for you, what has been, is it like just a certain time of the year, or is it like certain physical things that happen like that kickstart your process every year?
So I will say October 11th made the 6 years for me. So just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And this was the first year, 6 years, I didn't cry. I think that I had a very good support system around me this year. I anticipated crying. I anticipated like being sad, but this was the first year I didn't, and I was really shocked. I think because I can remember all of those things. Um, but for me to answer your question, it can be anything. I have been in the grocery store, and I would walk down the meat aisle, and my dad used to pick at me for like the way I picked out meat because I would just like look for the cheapest price, and he would say, "That's not I mean, that's a good thing, but you need to look at what you're getting for that cheap price." And I start laughing, and I just like, "Oh my God, let me make sure nobody's watching me," because I just busted out laughing. I can hear a blues song. My daddy loved blues, and I can hear a blues song, and I might start crying.
Yeah.
My daddy loved Dallas Cowboys, so I could watch a game and just remember those different memories. It's crazy because it just kind of comes. And so I think what now every Father's Day I cry, and I think it's just like social media and people, and I'm just like I remember that I'll never have that again, right? And so my wedding day I cried a lot, just imagining that I will never have my dad to walk down the aisle. My husband will never get a chance to meet my dad. And I think more so than anything, honestly, if I'm being real with you, Aisha, I cry more for my baby brothers because I had my daddy for 27 years. I cannot fathom losing my parent at 13. Being there in the room when he was taking his last breath. I think I cry more for them because my daddy saw me graduate high school. He saw me graduate with my bachelor's. He saw me graduate with my master's. They'll never get that. They'll never get that opportunity for him to even see them graduate high school.
Yeah.
And so that hurts more than anything. And I think I cry more around those moments that they were, in a sense, robbed of than I was.
Which, and I'm sure that they, have those same thoughts, those same feelings, but they might be okay with it because they're seeing how over the top you go for them and how much your mom does for them. And so those might be their prominent memories surrounding those things. But I think sometimes we do hold on to other people's grief. We grieve for other people and we process things for them and take on their burdens sometimes, and it burdens us even more.
Right, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation, and this probably was not that long ago, with my husband about my dad died in October, and I immediately took on a lot of different roles. And so I really didn't process that my daddy was like never coming back until his birthday in February. So like we're talking almost 6 months later. And when his birthday came, I really realized that he was just like never ever coming back in human form and like on this side. And so I talked to my husband. I said, I was angry. I was angry with God. I was angry with myself because I wasn't there. I blamed myself like for not being at home when he was taking his last breaths. Like being at work and prioritizing everything else over my family. And I remember my husband saying to me, "You ever think that that's the way God needed them to remember your dad so that they could really realize that he was gone? Like you were grown and you knew the concept of death. They were so young. Maybe that was the only way that they were going to grasp the concept that he was never coming back."
Yeah.
And I never even thought about that. Like that was very powerful for him to say that. And I just had to think about it. Like, you're right. I've lost grandparents, family, friends, and they had never experienced death before. Not in that sense. Like they had never lost an aunt or an uncle or a family member. So that was their first time experiencing grief, and then it had to be their father. So when my husband put that to me like that, I'm like, wow, I didn't even think of it. Like, God loves us so much that sometimes he does stuff for us that is bigger than what we can see. Like, I needed them to grasp that he was dead, that I had, that he had passed on, and this was the only way that they were going to get that.
Yeah. And for you, what sticks out to me was that lingering moment where you just watched them. Mm-hmm. And that probably wasn't like an everyday thing. It was just like, I'm just standing here, I'm just looking, I'm admiring. You probably have all these thoughts going through your head. And that might have been the Lord's way of saying, like, Absolutely. Hey, I want you to have this last, like, peaceful memory.
Right. And that's what I said to my therapist when I finally began therapy as a therapist in February. She kept saying, well, what do you think this means? What do you think this means? And I said, I finally think that was God giving me my chance to say goodbye. He didn't need me to see my dad struggling to breathe or struggling to get up, or my mom trying to do CPR. He needed me to remember him sleeping peacefully. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, because he knows what we can and can't handle, which is, it's so much bigger than us.
It is.
Right? So you continued on through life. So at this point, you have gotten your master's degree. So he did get to see you do that. You were actively practicing as a counselor. So he did get to see that moment. But he didn't get to see you get married,
get
meet
my
your
doctorate.
husband, get your doctorate. No. How have you continued to push forward?
I think I know that I have a purpose in life, and I know the way I believe is that we die in our human bodies, and I know that there's another place that I will get an opportunity to see my dad. I also continue to remember him in certain ways. In my bouquet for my wedding, I had a picture of him there. My husband's mom is also passed, and so we had a memory table of both of them at our wedding. Mm-hmm. And so I just continue to know that he's looking out for me, and I know that every day that I wake up that I have a purpose. And so if God has given me breath and life, then that is my moment to seize every moment and to take every opportunity to just be better than the person that I was yesterday.
Absolutely. When you initially got married, it was just you and your husband.
It was my husband and I, and like, I'm going to guesstimate and say 20 of so his siblings were there, all three of his siblings. My oldest baby brother, I say baby, but they grown men. Mm-hmm. But he had already graduated high school. I have one aunt. My mom has one sister, and so she was here from Michigan, and she did not want to attend the big wedding because this was during the midst of COVID, because she's elderly. So she was there. My cousin was there. One of my greatest friends sung, and then some of my closest friends were there. So it was about 20 people.
Okay. So what do you think his passing also affected you initially wanting to just have that small intimate moment?
That was all my husband.
Okay.
My husband is very introverted. Mm-hmm. He doesn't seem that way, but that was our compromise. Mm-hmm. I always wanted a big wedding. Like, I always wanted big, fabulous. And he was like, okay, let's compromise. Let's do something small on the day that we want to get married, and then we can have something big later. But he wanted to be intimate. And so that was a way that we both, because it was both of our weddings. Mm-hmm. And so we had initially got engaged in March, and we were going to plan a big wedding in September. Things happened in between there, and we said, okay, well, let's push it back. Mm-hmm. And so instead of pushing back our initial wedding date, we just pushed back the big ceremony. Yeah. So we still got married on our date and just pushed back, like, where everybody could attend.
Yeah, I love that. So y'all just said, let's just have two whole weddings, one for you and one for me.
Yeah, basically. And he enjoyed the big wedding, but he didn't have to do it. But we did everything twice.
Yeah.
We said vows twice. Like, we did everything twice.
And some people just, have the initial wedding and then like a reception later. And you were like, no, I want to do everything in front of everybody. And it looked like y'all had so much fun.
We did.
You were so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with your dad not being there, were there ever moments where you didn't want to like continue, like where you didn't want to have a big wedding anymore, like when you maybe let grief kind of overwhelm you even momentarily?
Not for me, and I think I attribute that to going to therapy. Like I said, it took me a couple of months. I had to step in and play some big roles, but when I finally went to therapy, this is before I met my husband, before everything, I had such a good grief counselor that I was able to process my grief and work through it. And so by the time I met my husband, you never get over grief. You never get over grief. You never get over missing a person. But I had gotten past that grief was controlling my life stage because I went to therapy, and the lady was just really good at what she helped me do.
Yeah. So, first of all, shout out to these men of God, these beautiful, wonderful husbands who help us in our crises and trauma responses and handle all these triggers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm thankful.
Listen, one thing that I loved about you was like you dated in private for the most part, got married in private, like you did everything and it just popped up like, oh, surprise, we married.
There's a lot to that. I'm not going to use the word shame. Some people may say it was shame, but to that, my husband is 14 years older than me.
Oh, wow.
And so I think the only person that I was really worried about was my mom.
Okay.
Introducing him to my mom. And I mean, I had a few like worries about my family, but once my mom accepted him and loved him and his family accepted me, I didn't care what anybody else had to say.
Yeah.
I knew people would, say, what? He's so much older than her. Like, what's he doing? But that wasn't something that came up for us. Like, we didn't care. And so I think that was part of the reason at first when we first started dating. But it didn't take long for me to introduce him to my mom. And like I said, we were engaged in 6 months of dating. We married on our 1 year dating, and we've been together for 4 years now.
Nice. I love it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Listen, and my husband, it might be a little ashamed now. I told him on our podcast that I was a little embarrassed when we first started dating because he was 3 years younger than me. So I definitely know what that feels like. But it's like, baby, you can't tell me nothing about my man. But I said that to say your husband has been so supportive throughout the whole process, and he has seen like your highs, your lows, your grieving process. What are some of the ways that he has been supportive of you throughout this grieving?
He is my calm, right? So I may not seem like it, but I'm very dramatic. And I can overplay a lot of things, but I do that when I'm comfortable with people. My husband has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of me. And he's the only person I've ever felt comfortable seeing those parts outside of my mom. My mom is my best friend, one of my best friends. And so he's just really calm. Now, he listens. He lets me talk. He calls me out. He calls me out and tells me, you're not being honest about something, or you need to check yourself. And nobody has ever done that to me. I mean, I've always been very smart, very a leader, all of these different things. And so nobody's ever really thought to question me or to say, you know what, that's not right. And he's not afraid to do that. And I think that that's humbling, but also it is eye opening because it makes me think like everything ain't sweet. You may present to the world like everything is sweet, but I see those sides of you, and that comforts me.
Yeah.
I feel seen. So we pray together. We laugh together. That's our most fun thing to do is laugh and travel. And it's just he makes me feel safe.
Yeah.
And that is that's everything that I could have ever wanted.
I love that. I love love. I'm sorry. It's so sweet. So because you are the owner founder of Powerful Minds, woo woo. And how has that been? Because we talked a little bit about, how you are running it. But how has that been going into being a therapist, but also struggling through your own traumas? And how do you handle that when people come sit on your couch all day long and they are sharing, expressing with you, but you already have your own things going on at the same time?
Going to therapy. I continue to go to therapy. I may not go as often as I would like just because of scheduling, but I do try to go once or twice a month. So shout out to my therapist. That helps me staying grounded and knowing when to disconnect, right? So I think like when I'm in therapy and I'm in therapy mode, I'm a therapist. When I'm a wife, I'm a wife. When I'm in daughter sister mode, I'm in daughter sister mode. Like I can't completely cut it off. And so when my friends come, I have asked them to, ask me, do I have the space to hold what they, what space do you need me to be in? Because I can cut it off. I work from home. And when I close that office door, I'm no longer in therapy mode. Like I take it off. I practice good self-care. I try to get enough sleep. I do a lot, but I try to get enough sleep and rest. I try to do things that I enjoy. Going to get my nails done is therapeutic for me. Getting my hair done is therapeutic for me. Shopping is therapeutic for me. Sitting on the couch, reading a book or watching Netflix is therapeutic for me. And I just know how to separate. And I just have this resiliency to know that what's mine is mine. And my clients, even though I may have a heart for them and that's not mine to carry. Do I think about it? Yeah, I'm human. Do I go to bed saying sometimes, man, what can I do to help this person? Or, but what's also important is having a good foundation of therapists that you can consult with. Before we got on, I mentioned that my supervisor is still very active in my life. I haven't been in supervision since 2017. But I can call him right now and say, hey, I need to consult a case with you. Do you have time? I have a good, strong therapeutic group of friends who I can call and say, hey, can I run something by you? I'm struggling with this. But I think the big eye opener for me is when I was doing case management, 2014, 15, I had this young boy who came and he reminded me so much of one of my brothers. And it was like they call it, transference. And I remember just wanting to whoop him. Like, I remember, you just need a good whooping. Yeah. You just need a good whooping. And I had to remind myself, this is not your brother. You can't whoop him. Yeah. Right? Like, you can't. And so I remember my supervisor talking to me about transference and countertransference and how to separate. And I've just taken that ever since with me. And, that's not my problem to carry. I can't carry their burden for you. For them. So that's how I do that.
So you said so much that I got to unpack, right? So the whole transference, countertransference. I feel like that's why people be like tiptoeing the line, and I'm people. Okay, it's me. Be tiptoeing the line, thinking that everybody's their kid. I can talk to all kids the same way that I talk to my kid, or I can talk to everybody the same way I talk to my sister, or And then people are like, whoa, like you don't even know me. You
Right.
can't handle me like that.
Right.
And I've seen so many adults have issues, especially with teens. When the teen is like, you don't even know me. And the adult's like, I care, but they don't know that you care because they don't know you. So are those examples of transference?
Absolutely. So transference would be seeing you through seeing myself in you and not seeing you as the client. Right? And so I need to see you as the client, not myself. So just because I went through a situation and you went through a situation, our situations are not the same. You handle things differently than I handled things differently. And that's what you have to see when you're a therapist. You cannot see yourself. And if you do, it happens, right? I'm not going to sit here and act like it doesn't happen. But those are some, and you have to know where to say no. You can't take on every client. Every client is not for you.
Babe, I think about like parent-child relationships though, because parents automatically assume like, oh, let me stop you before you even do this, because I did that same thing when I was 17, and I've had so many teens come to me and they're like, they treat me like I'm them, like I'm gonna do all the things that they did when I am my own person.
You have to do that. You have to know the client for who they are. So one of the things that not just I, but many therapists offer is or they should be offering a 15-minute consultation. That consultation, I tell people, when you call me, is not only for me to get to know what you want, but also for you to ask me questions. You need to know if I'm the therapist for you. I always, and this is something that I live by. I know some people don't live by this, but I always say, if your therapist has not been to therapy, you should run. You should run. That's just how I look at things. Some people say, well, I'm a therapist and I haven't been to therapy, but I always say we are human. When we take off this therapist hat, right? When we take off this therapist hat, we're still human. Like you said, we grieve, we suffer from our own depression and things like that. How can you help somebody else when you have not processed things? Like, how are you honestly? I really want to sit across from a therapist and really truly ask them, how can you do something when you are not healed? You can't.
That's the one. Yeah.
Even with separating, because at this point you're doing textbook work. And I love the textbook. It's the reason why I have so many degrees, right? I love to learn. But people don't want textbook. They don't want cookie cutter. They want real. They want, it's okay for you to feel angry. Scream, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. That's what they want. They don't want textbook.
Yeah. Wild. So the second thing I want to ask, okay, help us out. Help me out.
Okay.
Help the people of God today. You said you know how to turn it off. I have not seen people who are able to really, really separate all of their different roles and their different hats. And I know it's some men of God out there who their wife may have watched a show on with some like counseling or some degrees, and now they're trying to, or they've been to counseling,
right.
and now they're trying to practice on their husbands. And it's like, he's like, whoa, like, I need you to be my wife.
Right.
I don't need you to be my therapist.
Yes.
Teach us today.
I think, again, it goes back to seeing the person. It goes back to, I don't want to be a therapist all the time. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, It's draining. It's draining because people come and they lay some of the most sacred things that they've never shared with anybody. Sometimes I'm the first person my clients text when they pass a test or fail a test or they lose a job. Like, I'm the first person they reach out to. I don't want to carry that all the time. So I have to be able to separate that. When I'm with my husband, I want to laugh. I want to have fun. I don't want to be therapizing him. Like, I want to truly enjoy being his wife. You know, When I am with my friends, I want to truly enjoy being with my friends. And so I have to put that down. I just have to. I have to put that space of me down. Now, in my head, thinking, this person may be a little borderline. Yeah, I absolutely am thinking those things. And so I think we need to talk about what do I mean by separate?
Mm-hmm.
Is my mind going thinking, okay, are you a little depressed? Yeah, you are. But am I going to invade that person's privacy and space at brunch and say, you depressed, ain't you, girl? No, that's embarrassing. Nobody wants their therapist friend to do that. But if my friend calls me and say, hey, I'm having these symptoms, can you kind of tell me what's going on? But all of that leads back to ethics. Mm-hmm. Ethics says that you cannot do therapy on family members or friends, and you can't do certain things like that. So I work too hard for my license to jeopardize it over, oh, well, come see me and do this.
Yeah.
So I will say, hey, yeah, that sounds like depression. Here's some people that let me refer you to.
Mm. So for the people out there who ain't got no degree, okay. Well, I mean, I have a master's, but not in counseling.
Right.
Okay. Who I will watch some YouTube videos, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Who watch a bunch of TikToks of people therapizing, and we see all the signs and symptoms, and we be trying to diagnose people in our heads. How do we refrain from now treating people based on our thought processes?
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to flip this back
Go
on
ahead.
you.
Just listen.
Would you do that with physical symptoms? Would you start becoming my doctor, my medical doctor? Or would you say, no, I need you to go, this is not right. It sounds like you might have cancer, but I'm not going to start diagnosing you and telling you that you have cancer because I haven't had that training.
You want my honest answer? Baby, we finna Google because I need to know what's wrong with you.
Well, again, you're going to research, but you're not going to start saying, let me start treating this person.
Yeah.
So we need to do the same thing with mental health, right?
See, but hear me out though, because we're in this era of the natural girlies, right? Where you can get some herbs and it fix everything. Yeah. And so they will be trying to prescribe you some Ayurvedic herbs and be like, if you take some Calinda and some spirulina and you do this 3 times a day when juice this star fruit, then it'll heal you all your symptoms, because I watched it on TikTok.
There are people who do that, but I would caution people when, you said, how do I help you? I would caution people by giving them any information that you're not able to stand on and defend in court or defend against anybody, right? Even when I'm given a diagnosis in a therapy room, there's assessments and there are things that help me to prove that. People are like, well, I know I'm depressed because of this. I don't just say, oh, you're depressed because you told me you're depressed. I'm going to give you a PHQ-9. And you're going to answer these questions, and that test that has been proven is going to tell me that you have depression. Just like when you go to the doctor. They're not just going to say, oh, yeah, I have a cold or I have COVID. They're going to give you a test, and that test is going to tell you that you have COVID.
They sure be doing that, and it makes me so mad because I got all the signs and symptoms of COVID. Why you want to give me the COVID test anyway?
Because no one's going to stand, because if I say, okay, Aisha, you have COVID, and then you don't have COVID, now you're coming after my license and my practice, and I work too hard for that. I'm going to have evidence-based information for what I'm giving you. And so I just tell people that you can do all of that. I have clients who go to healers and spirituals and all of these different things, and that's great, right? But you're coming to me if that works for you, I'm going to give you evidence-based practices. And so if I decide to call a friend and say, hey, I'm having these symptoms, do you have a herb for this? And I get sick or I have a reaction, what am I going to do? I'm eventually going to go to the doctor, right? Because now I'm having more symptoms than I were, and I'm going to get evidence-based treatment. I'm not going to just take the word of somebody who doesn't have that knowledge and background, even with all of their expertise. So how you do that is you may say, you know what, I read up on this, friend, and it seems like you're dealing with depression. Let me give you this card of a therapist or somebody who can explore that further with you. That's how you do that. Because it's okay. You should be doing that. You should be researching and you should be reading and you should be doing these things. I have a love-hate for technology. I love TikTok, right? We all love TikTok. We all love YouTube and Instagram. But sometimes the information that is being spread is not always accurate. And it allows for people to manipulate it the way that works best for them, not for the other person. And I just don't like that.
Yeah. Because if I can convince you that this is the cure, then I can 3 weeks down the line sell you this product that I'm now partnered with that shows you these results that are not evidence-based.
Yep. And we have what we call buzzwords right now, right? What do you think some of those buzzwords? If I were to say buzzwords,
narcissist.
Yes. Yes.
Triggers is probably one. Let me think. Okay, so narcissist, triggers. I just saw this one earlier. Overstimulated.
Yeah. Neurodivergent. Everyone wants to be neurodivergent.
Everybody's
ADHD.
They're neurodivergent.
And you've had no test to prove. And I'm not saying that you don't have symptoms or you don't fit into certain categories or certain things that matter. Those are not, I'm not saying that at all. But get some real answers. Really talk about those things. And you know how hard you have to, like, how miserable or horrible of a person you have to really be to get a narcissistic diagnosis?
Correct.
Like, not everybody is narcissistic. Some people are just jerks.
Yeah.
Like, some people are just jerks and you trauma bond with people, and some people are, just emotionally abusive, but that doesn't make that person narcissistic. You have a short attention span. Is your short attention span because you're ADHD, or is it because you have 12 or 15 hours of screen time every day and you're never giving your brain a time to shut off? Our brains and bodies need rest, and all of those things are triggering, those things are real. Or is your diet, is your health, of all of those things in place, or are you truly ADHD?
Yeah. And I love that. I love that you said that it's evidence-based, because sometimes we do try to self-diagnose and we will say, like, oh, I'm depressed. Recently, I was going through this, like, weird season, and I would not say that out of my mouth. I'm like, I'm seeing the signs and symptoms of what people would say is postpartum depression, but I don't feel depressed. Like, I know that that's not, just because I have 2 of the symptoms doesn't mean that I check all of the boxes. And when I started just evaluating, I was like, oh, Aisha, I think you're just disappointed. You just had a lot of stuff happen that was disappointing to you, and you might be a little sad because of that, but that is not saying that you are depressed.
Depressive, and I could be wrong about the number, so I'm not going to quote it, but I do know that you have to have consistent symptoms for over 2 weeks, for at least 2 weeks consistent, for you to be giving a clinical diagnosis of depression.
Yeah. And
if you think back, are you like, has it been 2 weeks or has it been 2 days?
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to have a certain amount. We have the DSM, right? The DSM is like our Bible in therapy world. And so you go through these symptoms and it says, okay, I mark off, I have to have, let's just say 5 out of the 7 symptoms consistent for 2 weeks in order for someone to clinically diagnose me with depression or clinically diagnose me with anything. You have to have a certain amount of those things for it to be clinical. And a lot of times, like you said, we don't have those symptoms. We just feel sad, and sad is an emotion just like hunger. Hunger is an emotion. Tired is an emotion. It's a feeling. And we're human and we're going to have those things. Those things are going to come up. It's not going to be just rainbows and sunshine every day. And if it was, then everybody would be perfect, right?
Exactly.
That's not true.
Listen, I didn't mean to make you work on your day off, but I appreciate you, okay? Counselor, teacher extraordinaire. You got so many hats and you do so many jobs, but I'm so thankful that you came.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. It was different than I was expecting, but you gave us a whole lesson, a little therapy session in there today. So I'm very happy. Thank you for coming in. So I want to pray today for the people who are struggling with those trauma responses that year after year they are still in that grief cycle over and over again to get to a healthier place. So if you don't mind.
Of course.
Father, I thank you so much for Shelbi and for every person that will watch this video. I pray that you would help all of us to release those burdens that we're not supposed to carry, to give you our burdens and to take on your yoke because you said it's light. Help us to begin to release even those muscle memories that don't belong to us, the things that are keeping us bound in grief and in frustration and in anger. Help us to process out those emotions so that we can continue to walk out our purpose and continue to be who it is that you've called us to be. Now, Father, I want to pray a special blessing over Shelbi and over her husband. I pray that you would just continue to draw them closer and closer together. I pray that you would bless their union and that you would bless them even though they are grieving, even though they've both lost parents. I pray that you would fill them with a joy like never before, that you would send people around them to continue to support them and love them and encourage them. And I thank you for it all now. And it's in the mighty name of Jesus Christ that we do pray. Amen. Thank you
beautiful.
for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
It was good.
I didn't know what to expect either, but it was good.
Yeah.
It was good to just talk.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.